Hello everyone, I am the Desert Gardener, and recently another YouTuber, one that's way more popular than I am, posted a video of 10 ways to get rid of fungus gnats. Now, what bothered me about this video is nowhere in the video did he mention that he had actually tested any of these methods. In fact, I kind of got the impression that he'd just gone online, did a Google search, and found a website that listed 10 ways and then read them to us like we were small children who couldn't do our own Google search. Well, I have actually tested a number of these methods, so I'm going to tell you which ones work and which ones don't. So I got my tea. Let's talk about that. So the first method he talks about is the hot water method. Now, if you've seen any of my older videos, you know I definitely recommend this method, and I do use it myself. You take your potting soil mix, you put it in a bucket, you pour boiling hot water over the top, you mix it up. The idea here is it will kill any fungus gnat eggs and larvae that are already in the soil. Now, can I prove this works? Well, not really. That would take me having to magnify and analyze and count the number of eggs and larvae and then do it afterwards and see what the difference is. And of course, most of us just don't have access to that type of equipment. But I can say that every time I've done this, I notice a lot less fungus gnats. So I'm going to call it plausible, but I do think it works. And because it's so simple and so cheap, I think you should be doing it every single time. There's no reason not to. Now, the next few methods he talks about, I'm going to sort of go over really quickly because they're things you should be doing anyway. If you're starting your seeds indoors under grow lights, you shouldn't be overwatering. You should be bottom watering. You should let the tops of the soil dry out. You should use a fan, and you should use cinnamon on any fungus you see. You should be doing all of those anyway, whether you see fungus gnats or not. So I'm just going to kind of skip over all of those. Now, the next one he talks about is Diatomaceous Earth. Now, if you've not familiar with that, it's a powder, and it feels very soft, but if you look at it under a microscope, it's a lot of really sharp edges. The idea is soft-bodied insects can't crawl over it without getting cut up and die. So theoretically, this works. The problem is the way he recommended using it is mixing it in with your moist soil. Now, this does not work because diatomaceous earth only works when it's dry. If you get it wet, it loses its effectiveness, and it's simply not going to work. So in this context, this is completely busted. It won't work. It's meant to be used on top of dry soil, and it's meant mostly for like slugs and snails and things like that. So I don't think it's going to work here at all. So the next few he talks about are different ways to trap the adults. Now, the first method he talks about is using a vinegar and soap solution in a dish. The next one is a vinegar in a jar with plastic over the top with a little slit. So what happens is they go through the slit, attracted by the vinegar, and they get caught in there and can't get out. And the next one is to use sticky traps. Now, you can purchase them online, or you can make your own, like this one here. This is just a Post-it note on a popsicle stick, and it's got petroleum jelly smeared all over it. The idea here is they are attracted to the yellow, they land on it, get stuck, and they die. Now, when I did this test, I set up multiples of each in an area where I knew that there were adult fungus gnats. And I left for a while, I came back, and how many did I catch? 1. That's not really going to make a dent in the population. Now, an interesting side note here is there is a white countertop near where I did this test, and I had previously wiped it down with a sponge and it was still wet. And I caught a good half a dozen adult fungus gnats just because they'd landed on the counter and died in the water. So I caught more accidentally than I did with all these traps put together. So I'm going to call all of these busted. They're simply not going to do enough to get rid of your fungus gnat population. So I wouldn't bother. Now, the next one he talks about is neem oil. Now, my recipe for neem oil is a little different than his, but I'll tell you mine. you fill up a bottle like this with water. You put in a tablespoon of neem oil, a tablespoon of dish soap like Dawn, and about 10 to 20 drops of peppermint oil. And then you take your plants that are infected outside and you give the plant itself a quick squirt. Now what happens here is any adult fungus gnats that are on the plant are going to fly away. So you're already done with those. Then you're going to spray it on the soil. Now give it a really good soaking. You want it to soak in at least a ½ an inch to an inch. The idea here is the soap in the solution is going to kill any eggs and larvae. And the neem oil and the peppermint oil, they don't like the smell of, so they're not going to come back and lay more eggs here, because a single adult fungus gnat can lay hundreds of eggs. So you need to not only get rid of the eggs and the larvae, but make it so they don't want to lay any more. And this works really well. Every time I've used this, I only have to really use it once, and I notice a huge drop in the population, and you continue using it every couple of days, and before you know it, they're pretty much all gone. And there might be a few stragglers here and there, but I think this works very well, so I'm going to call this one confirmed. Now the next one he talks about is actually quite similar. It's hydrogen peroxide. Now you take 5 parts water, 1 part hydrogen peroxide, and you put it in an opaque spray bottle like this one here. Now the reason you want an opaque bottle is you don't want to expose hydrogen peroxide to light. It loses its effectiveness. And in fact, that's why I bought this particular bottle. But the neem oil spray works so well, I don't have any left to test it on. Now it seems like it would work. You spray it on the soil, and it is supposed to kill the eggs and the larvae. But unlike the neem oil, it may not keep them from coming back. Once it dries, any adults that are in the area are going to come back. So I can't comment on this one too much since I didn't do it myself, but I do think the neem oil is the better option. Now the next one he talks about is a product called Mosquito Bits. It's again kind of the similar thing. You dissolve it in water and water your plants with it, and it soaks down into the soil and kills any eggs and larvae. It's supposed to work pretty well. Again, this is another one I haven't tried myself, but if you have a lot of plants that you need to do, this can get kind of expensive. A small bottle is about 15 bucks and the big bottle is like 40 bucks. So if you have a lot to do, this can get kind of expensive, where I think the neem oil works just as well and is probably a lot cheaper. Now there are a few other ones that he didn't mention that I want to talk about real quick, and one of them is fly paper or fly ribbon. Now you just it looks like this when you purchase it, and you pull it out and it gets long and you hang it in the window wherever there's you're having a problem with flies or fungus gnats. And it works very well. I'll catch a dozen or so within the first couple of days. It works pretty well. And eventually it dries up, so after about a week or two you should take it down, throw it away and put up another one. But I'm going to call this confirmed, because this definitely seems to work to get rid of the adults, and it will keep them from laying more eggs. That keeps the process moving. Another one is to simply get rid of the infected soil. So if you only have a couple of plants that you're having a problem with, take it outside, pull the plant out of the container, get rid of all of the old soil, and put fresh new soil in, and put it in a new container. It's a great thing to do if you're going to move up to a larger size. And this will get rid of all the eggs and the larvae that are in the soil. Now it won't get rid of the adults, but that's what the fly paper is for. So I think this is a good method if it's something that you're going to be doing anyway. If you're going to be up potting, definitely put in fresh soil. This should do a lot, so I'm calling this one plausible. And the next one is the use of sand. Now sand works pretty well. What you do is get rid of the top layer of soil and replace it with sand. Now sand works great because any larvae and eggs that are in the soil can't come out, and any adults that are in the area can't lay eggs in it through the sand. So it works fantastic. So I'm going to call it confirmed. However, every time I've used this, the plant has died. So I would use it with a lot of caution. I'm not really sure why. The water does get through the sand, so it's not like the plant's not getting its water. I think maybe it's not getting the oxygen it needs because the sand creates quite a layer and air can't get through, and maybe that's why. So if you do use the sand method, don't leave it on for a long period of time. Just long enough to get rid of the fungus gnat problem and then take the sand off. So it does work, but I probably wouldn't recommend it for long-term use, as it could damage the plant. Now the last one is the potato method. Now you cut up a raw potato and you bury it in the soil, and the larvae are attracted to the potato, and then you just pick it out after a few days and throw it away. This works okay. The problem is you're really not going to get a whole lot this way. You're going to get a few, and unfortunately the neem oil works much better. So I'm really going to call this one busted. You're not going to get rid of enough to get rid of your problem. So to recap here, the three that I really recommend are the hot water, pouring boiling hot water over your container mix before you use it and stir it up, works well. The next one is the fly paper. This will get rid of a lot of the adults. And then the neem oil, soap, and peppermint solution on the plant and on the soil will keep the larvae and the eggs from hatching and the adults from laying more eggs. I think using those three are really your best methods. Fortunately, fungus gnats aren't really a huge problem. They're not going to hurt you, and they're not going to hurt your plants. They're just kind of a pain in the butt, like misinformation on the internet. So, see you in the next one.